It's Friday, I'm feeling good. This is a complete knockoff of Jeremy John's videos. The only thing I'm missing is the leather jacket. Go check him out, he does movie reviews if you're interested. But yeah, doing something a little different. If you like this kind of shooken up format, let me know down in the comment section below. It's been a long journey leading up to the launch of Starfield. There's been some ups, there's been some downs. I wanted to go through some of those moments, talk about my favorite things about the journey leading to Starfield. Maybe you agree with some of it, maybe you disagree with other parts of it. That's totally fine, it's the internet. But I wanted to discuss the ups and the downs about the journey to Starfield, so in the hopes that when Elder Scrolls 6 comes around, if somebody from Bethesda happens to stumble across this, maybe, just maybe, if I pray hard enough, some of this feedback can be heard by someone who can make a difference. And to start off, I really wanted to jump into some of the things I just didn't like. I wanted to get the negative side of the video out of the way. For number one, and this really is something to do with Bethesda's community, not necessarily anything within Bethesda's control. Maybe it's because I'm so ingrained within Bethesda Game Studios games that I feel like I just see it everywhere. It's the Bieder-Meinhof phenomenon. But it just seems like I've seen this more with the Bethesda Game Studios game than anywhere else, where the moment that Bethesda goes silent for a month or even a couple weeks,
everyone loses their minds.
You know, suddenly Bethesda was doing a lot of things with the Q&A videos, with the developer interviews, like it, hate it, I actually enjoyed it. But as soon as Bethesda went quiet for some period of time, overnight, people became marketing experts because they, I don't know, were a communications major or they read a marketing textbook for an elective in college. Obviously, I'm being dramatic for the sake of this video. I don't mean to insult anyone. Suddenly, whether Bethesda wasn't talking about the game or they did start talking about the game, they were always doing something wrong. But specifically with the silence, people started claiming that if they don't talk about it, then nobody's going to know about Starfield and their marketing is going to be a disaster and they're going to lose out on sales. It's not an early access title where you invest into the game and you expect to hear updates about it. If they have nothing to say, they have nothing to say. Bethesda, with their team of marketing people focused inherently 100% on making sure that Starfield gets marketed as best as it can be, they know more than the random people on the internet spewing things across Twitter, I'm sorry, X, as though it were fact. And now it's you can't find the Constellation Edition, it's constantly sold out. Maybe you want a conspiracy theory that it's artificial scarcity. Fine, I'll play your game, I'll play ball with that one, but it was one of the top pre-ordered games after the Starfield Direct. Like, you're not convincing me that this game is not reaching the audience it intended to reach. So by the time that Elder Scrolls 6 comes around, take a breath, calm down. If Bethesda's not talking about the game, they'll talk about when they're ready for it, and that's just what it's going to be. You selfishly wanted a trailer for yourself because you wanted to see more about the game. I'm just saying. You could be honest with me, it's fine. This is a open environment. Number two, and if anybody were to agree with anything unanimously on this list, it'd probably be this. Even at Bethesda, I'm inclined to believe that they would agree with this one. That was the announcement of the release date way, way too early.
You've got Starfield, you have a release date that's in, I'm going to call it pencil on the calendar. You've penciled it right now. I don't think no game release dates get written in ink anymore until like they've...
Yeah, we wrote it pretty hard in that trailer. So.
Well, I want to ask you about that in a minute, but...
I don't want to hear the release date written in ink. I don't want to hear it written in stone. I want to hear it just when it's going to come out. Bethesda historically has been pretty good with this. With Starfield, there were a lot of things going on, a lot of stuff that shook up the game, and I understand it's part of the development process. Game development, it's hard. I'm not trying to pretend I know about game development. I'm not a developer. If you could wait as long as possible to reveal that release date, it's better for all of us, yourself included. To my understanding, Phil Spencer at one point came in. Todd Howard was ready to release the game. Phil Spencer comes in and goes, "Nah, you're gonna get this game perfect. You're gonna like it, and you're gonna take as much time as you need." I like to imagine this scenario where Phil Spencer just came in and wagged his finger at Bethesda into submission. You see Todd Howard somewhere in the corner of Bethesda HQ. I didn't need Phil Spencer's help. I could have gotten the game out on time. There's something about it just makes me giggle thinking of that image in my head. Ultimately, we're all happy that the game is getting the time it needs, and when Phil Spencer says things like it's the most polished Bethesda game that's going to get released,
if it shipped today, this would be the, have the fewest bugs that any game from Bethesda has ever shipped with. And if it was today.
that is motivational, inspiring, confidence-inducing, whatever you want to call it, it's a good sign to me. Will I ultimately, when I get my hands on Starfield, I start playing it for the first time, forget about all the delays that led to this point? 100%. But do I want to experience it again with The Elder Scrolls 6? No, not at all. The third thing, and kind of the last bugaboo that I had, and this is genuinely a serious one, when Bethesda stands on the stage and has something like the Starfield Direct, you can be sure that a bunch of questions are going to come out as a result of it. Even no matter how comprehensive you think you're being, there's still going to be gaps, because the folks at Bethesda, they've either seen the game or been playing the game for months on end. We're seeing it for the first time, and so there's going to be that gap in information and communication. We're going to have questions. There weren't really any follow-up interviews, there weren't really the AMAs, there weren't blog posts on their own website to clarify a lot of the simple questions that I think fans were having about the game. And I understand there's certain features that you're going to want to save for big reveals, and for something like, can you fly the ship within a planet's atmosphere, that's a simple no. Maybe a feature like that they didn't have planned at the time, or they were trying to make it work, they weren't sure if they could. I get it, game development is hard. Plain and simple. But if there's a feature definitively, like land vehicles, that you know is not going to be in the game and people are asking about it, I don't think it's too hard to say, hey, sorry, no, there's no land vehicles. However you need to get that information across. It doesn't need to be a formal interview with Ryan McCaffrey at IGN. Just put it on your blog page. Promise you, people will take notice. So with those simple things, a lot of folks, for example, are asking whether or not Elder Scrolls 6 is going to take place in Hammerfell and High Rock, and how you would traverse between the two. If people start speculating that we're going to be able to sail our boat between the two continents, between the two regions, and that's obviously and blatantly not part of the plan, it wouldn't be such a bad thing if Bethesda came out front and said, hey, no, actually, that's not. There's going to be a fast travel or a carriage mechanic. Ultimately, fans, I believe, will appreciate the transparency. And again, if there's a staple feature you think is going to be this massive reveal, that's something completely different. It's interesting. It's as though developers, from the outside looking in, it feels as though a lot of times developers want to keep stuff close to their chest. We as fans want to know as much as possible, and finding the balance between those two aspects isn't the easiest thing to do, but I hope that it can be done better in the future. The stuff I did like, though, first and foremost, 100% was absolutely the Starfield Direct. I think it goes without saying, most people really loved the style of the Starfield Direct. Not only the large chunk, we had 40 minutes of information plus a new gameplay trailer that showed off things that weren't necessarily in the Direct. That alone was awesome, but also, and Bethesda acknowledged this publicly, being able to see the developers in their roles talking about the parts of the game that they worked on from faces and from voices that we usually wouldn't hear, I really do respect that. For some of these folks, it was their first time getting on camera. They did a great job, and 100% in the future, I want to see more of that. What I will say, specific to the Starfield Direct, one thing I will genuinely say I appreciated about the Skyrim demo versus Direct gameplay was Skyrim felt more like a seamless experience where you watch the character walk down the road, get into combat, go through the inventory, do everything that you would usually do in Skyrim, but we saw it in real time, and I liked that. Starfield felt a lot more chopped up, a lot more segmented. I know there's a lot for Starfield to show off, but I thought that Skyrim did a little better. Thing too that I really appreciated, those developer Q&A videos or the developer insight videos where they were just sitting around talking about Starfield, showing off some brand new concept art. Yes, everybody wanted to see gameplay. We all know that, but in hindsight, it was pretty fun. Even the inconsistency. Settled systems in October, Into the Starfield Episode 1 in November, Painting the Starfield in February, the longest gap, you have 3 months there, and then finally the most recent Into the Starfield Episode 2 in March. I know some of them just stopped abruptly. They began the Q&A series. That went on for maybe 2 videos and then nothing, and so it annoyed some gamers, but to me it was fun to get those insights that we did get. And I'd love to see more of that for The Elder Scrolls 6. It's just incredibly cool to me to see, A, developers sit down to talk about things they're incredibly knowledgeable and passionate about, but also they're probably just as excited to talk about some of these features as we are to hear about them. And that's part of it that I felt really resonated with some of these videos. And that's why I liked them as much as I did. Honestly, would it have been fun if it was on a consistent cadence and a very predictable schedule? Probably not, because because part of the fun is the guessing, is the speculation. That's part of the build-up, that's part of the anticipation, that's part of the excitement leading up to a game's announcement or full reveal or whatever it might be at the time. And lastly, I have to say, probably one of the highlights for me was Todd Howard hosting an AMA, and there were a lot of great questions, a lot of great answers, and it was cool to understand that we have that window of communication from someone within Bethesda that sometimes can feel as though they're elevated on this pedestal, impossible to reach, doesn't have social media, can't really communicate with them, and I would love to see more of that going forward if the time permits it. Honestly, the most exciting part about any of this is seeing these communities form, these communities grow, the excitement, the speculation, the ups and the downs are all part of the overall experience that leads to the excitement that is Starfield. I'm happy to have been on this journey with all of you guys as we get really close to the launch of the game. Looking forward to going into the future of Starfield and Bethesda with all of you. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.